Over the past few years, I've built, managed, and recruited multi-8-figure sales teams that have done over $40 million a year in revenue, $3.5 million a month in cash collected. And in today's videos, I'm gonna show you exactly how I built those teams, what did I fuck up on, what did I do really well. That way, one, you can learn from my mistakes, but two, you're able to implement it in your own business so you can hit this target of getting and learning how to build $1 million a month sales team. My name is Yash Jara. I'm the CEO and founder of the Impact Team. We are an organization on a mission to make real sales education available to everyone for absolutely free. And our mission when we work with companies is to build companies that people want to be a part of and know they're taken care of. And today I'm gonna show you exactly how you can do that in your organization. There are 5 main steps you need to have in order to build $1 million a month sales team. I'm gonna break it down step by step for you, but I'm gonna give you the general overview of what it looks like now. Number 1 is data. Number 2, sales via marketing. Number 3, recruitment and retention. Number 4, culture. Number 5, leadership, okay? Now, everybody wants to achieve a big goal in life, whether you're running a business, whether you're a salesperson, okay? The biggest thing you need to do if you're gonna understand that you need to hit $1 million, let's say a month in cash collection in your company, regardless of what type of company it is you have to reverse engineer the numbers you need to hit in order to hit that outcome. So I'm gonna give you a bit of an example right now, and then this is gonna tie perfectly into the second step, which is sales and marketing. Let's say my goal is $1 million a month cash collected in my sales team. Let's say I have a team of 10 salespeople, so I have 10 closers, and let's pretend I have 3 setters, so SDRs. In order for me to do 10 closers, just on basic math, I need each closer collecting about $100K a month in cash. And if I have 3 setters, I need 3 setters each to do, let's say, $333K collected. Depending on how you're doing marketing, let's pretend for this example, I run a VSL. So I have an ad that goes to a VSL that goes into a booked appointment. Now let's say my cost to acquire a booked appointment is $50, and my show up rate, let's pretend, is 70%. And let's pretend my close rate, 30%. For most of you watching this video right now, most of you don't even know these numbers. You have no idea what your show up rate is, and if you know your show up rate, it's based on vague data. You have no idea what your cost per acquisition is on an appointment. You know how much it costs to acquire a lead, but you have no idea what does it cost to acquire a booked appointment. And yes, those are 2 different metrics. Your cost to acquire a lead via a booked appointment are different. So most people don't even know their basic data. Now let's pretend if you know this data, then it becomes simple to understand what are the data I need to hit in order to get to this goal of 1 million. So now look at it this way. $50 a booked appointment, 70% is gonna be my show up rate. So if I do $50, let's say an average closer is gonna take 8 calls a day, 5 days a week. Let's say that's how much they're taking. 8 times 5, that's 35. That's $350 a day. $350 a day times 5, that's $1,750. Based on these metrics, if let's say this is your business, $50 a booked appointment. $50 times 8 slots a day is $350. $350 times 5, $1,750. $1,750 times 4 weeks out of the month, $7,000. So if this tells me my average marketing cost to get a closer filled up is $7,000. That is in order to get the amount of appointments I need. Now remember one thing, this is a 70% show up rate. So if I know that I have a 70% show up rate, which means 70% of all these appointments show up, that means out of 8 calls on average, 5 to 6 of them will show up, 2 of them will no show. So if we look at this metric, 5 sales calls a day at a 30% conversion, that means I'm closing 2 deals a day. 2 deals a day times 5 days a week, that's 10 deals. 10 times 4, that's 40. So that's 40 new deals a month. 40 new deals a month. For me to do 100 grand a month cash collected, which if I have 10 closers, that's my KPI. That means every closer needs to collect a minimum of $2,500 per call, which means I have to sell a minimum of a 5K offer, because worst comes to worst, I have a 50% cash collection, I hit this target. The point of this example is to understand your data. If you were a business and you want to get to $1 million cash collection, the first key is understanding the data you need to hit in order to hit that outcome. So if I look at these metrics, it's like, okay, if I'm a closer, I need to do 100K a month cash collected. As a business owner, I'm going to spend $7,000 a month to get that closer with 8 calls a day, 5 days a week at a 70% show up rate. So out of 5 calls a day that they take, worst case scenario, they need to close 2 deals. 2 deals times 5 times 4 weeks out of the month, that's 40 new deals a month. As long as this person's collecting $2,500 per call, I'm in the green with the salesperson. I have no reason to fuck with them. If anything, I want to make them better, but I have no reason to change anything they're doing. Most people don't actually know the numbers you need to hit in order to do $1 million a month cash collected. $1 million a month cash collected in any business is fairly simple. In 6 months to a year, you could easily do that. But the key is most people don't have the right data, which means they don't have the right KPIs or the right structures to give to their closing team or their setting team. Now again, this is a closer's KPI, right? This is the data for a closer. Now when I make the setter KPI, it's going to be different. 333K collected. A setter's KPI is 2 things, booked appointments and show up rate. That is how you track a setter's success rate. A closer's success rate, as you can imagine, is based on their close ratio and how much cash they're collecting. What are their deal sizes? The first step to you ever getting to $1 million a month is you got to understand this shit. Most of you don't know this right here. You don't know your show up rate across the different lead sources. You have a different show up rate from your organic rather than paid. And the issue with a lot of companies is when you don't know your exact data, you end up spending more money. Most people don't actually solve their problems. They just spend more money to solve their problems, but that doesn't mean you solve it. And I'll give you an example. Let's pretend you have an 80% show up rate on organic, but you have a 40% show up rate on paid ads. Most companies will just spend more money in ads and record more content. That's not the fucking solution. The solution is you figure out the paid ads, why you're at a 40% conversion, you figure out if it's a skill set issue with your setters, or you figure out if it's a sales process issue, and you fix that before you increase your ad spend. But nobody likes being patient. Everybody wants shit done tomorrow. And so if you don't know this data right now, if you don't know, most of you know what type of marketing you're running, but if you don't know your cost per acquisition on a booked appointment, you don't know what your show up rate is, you don't know what your close rate is. If you don't have those metrics defined, you got to first understand that. Once you understand that, you then reverse engineer the numbers it's going to take to hit $1 million a month cash collected. Hitting $1 million a month, it's just a fucking number. But I got to understand the inputs necessary from my sales team. That is the driving force of my revenue. I have to understand the inputs they need to hit that outcome, because then that's exactly what I hold them accountable to. So the first step to you getting to $1 million a month is reverse engineer based on your current team. How do you get there? And let's pretend it's unrealistic, like there's no way we can get to $1 million with the current team because we have too few people. Then you can just hire more people, which I'm gonna cover later in this video. But if you need to first understand what does it actually take to get there, and not just every closer needs to collect 100 grand a month in cash, we get to $1 million. No shit, Sherlock. Figure out the exact metrics. How much is it gonna cost you to fill up every one of your closers? In this example, $7,000 a month. When I was collecting 700 grand a month in cash, to give you perspective, the company was spending about 50 grand a month on ads just to get me, myself alone, filled up with 16 sales calls a day, 7 days a week, right? So I was on average taking 300 to 400 calls a month. So it used to cost the company 50 grand to fill me up, but I brought 700 grand cash collected every month, right? So they knew what they could expect from me. You're gonna have certain A players that produce more than this, but you have to think not worst case scenario or best case scenario, you need to think neutral case scenario. That's how you want to do your data. Most people, the mistake they make is they make their data based on best case scenario or worst case scenario. Make a neutral case scenario. That way you're not here nor there. That's the first step. Second step to getting to $1 million a month cash collected in any business, sales via marketing. Now, I'm gonna give you a few stories in this example because I think it's gonna put it into perspective. When I was managing a $40 million a year company, we had $1 million a month in ad spend. We were spending $10 million a year, super unprofitable, right? We got profitability sometimes when I made certain changes, but then I'm gonna go over kind of some mistakes I made. The thing with sales and marketing is there's no such thing as sales via marketing. Sales and marketing have to work together, right? They have to be aligned. Now, what does alignment mean? Alignment means there needs to be an element of feedback loops to where sales communicates with marketing and marketing communicates with sales. And I'm gonna give you kind of the definition of success for both of these roles. The goal of the marketing department is to create demand. Your goal as a marketer needs to be, how do I get to a point where by the time the sales team hops on with the closers, right, or the sales team overall, they are ready to buy. They know the brand, they trust the brand, they know it enough. My job as a salesperson in the sales department is whatever marketing cannot provide, I close. So whatever marketing cannot do, the marketing wasn't able to get the prospect problem aware, marketing wasn't able to get the prospect solution aware, which I'm gonna explain what those mean in a sec. Whatever marketing can't do, my job in the sales department is to fix that by closing the deal. The goal of marketing is how do I make sales job easier? The goal of sales is whatever marketing doesn't do, I need to fix. And so I'll give you an example. There was a company I used to work for. We were doing about 40 million a year in turnover. We were spending $1 million a month in ads. And there was one month we spent, I think it was 600 grand a month in ads, and we produced, I think it was about 250 booked calls, something like that. Then the next month, we spent $1 million in ads, so 40% increase, and we produced the same amount of booked appointments. And I remember looking at that and being like, well, hold on, that doesn't make any fucking sense. And so the marketing team didn't make an excuse, but their reasoning of why they spent 40% extra budget was it's a branding exercise. Now, if I look at that problem as a salesperson, I'm gonna be like, fuck you, you didn't get me the outcome. But if I look at it as a CEO and a business person, the issue was there wasn't enough communication with sales and marketing because the sales team didn't need an extra budget, they needed better quality leads. And so rather than going from 600K to $1 million in ad, what if the marketing team just focused on making better marketing, getting better quality leads through a better VSL, a better form, rather than spending 400 grand extra that took away from the profitability of the company. Most people don't want to solve their problems, they want to throw money to solve their problems. And you have to remember, when you are running a business, I hate to break it to you, you cannot invest in a coaching program, a consultant to go figure shit out. You need to actually figure it out yourself. Throwing money doesn't solve a problem. Throwing money at problems just condenses the problem just like a Band-Aid does to a broken arm. The way sales and marketing need to work together is there's an element of EQ and IQ. When you're running a company and you want to get to $1 million a month, when sales and marketing have to work together, you have to have an EQ element of sales, okay? And so usually what that is that's a sales manager. What marketing departments hate more than anything is they hate feeling. If you're running a marketing team, so I ran a marketing team and there was about 10, 15 people in there. And I think the biggest thing the marketing team hated above anything was salespeople, or the sales department, if you will, giving them feedback purely based on feeling rather than data. Marketing people love data, salespeople are built on emotion. Any salesperson you've hired is an emotional person. That's why they're in sales. Marketers are data driven. And so in order to make kind of sales and marketing work together, it takes somebody, usually a manager of some sort, that can review a ton of sales calls, right, or a ton of setting calls from the sales team and take the feedback based on data and then give it to the marketing team. Marketing sales have to work together. We ran a company, when I was in this company, we ran at 3.5 million a month cash collection with little to no communication between sales and marketing. And it fucked us. Super unprofitable towards the end of it because we were just spending a lot of money in marketing and sales and marketing weren't communicating. So marketing thought they were doing a great job because the cost to acquire a lead was cheap. Sales fucking hated that, because sales was pissed off that they weren't getting the right quality of leads. And so the point I'm trying to make is, like, if you were going to scale up to $1 million a month, sales and marketing, man, have to be like this. There has to be constant communication. A good way to avoid arguments and disagreements is simply have a manager that understands basic marketing and understands basic sales, right? If there's a manager that can go out there and review the sales calls of the closers and setters and then understand what words are being said in the sales calls, what are some of the objections that are popping up, take all that information, turn it into a report that has data that, okay, we had 50 calls this week and 40% of them, said they don't know the influencer. So we need to, make it more brand aware. That's the type of information you give to your marketing team and then they make it better. But if you don't have that type of communication, marketing is always going to want to spend more money in marketing. You as the business owner don't want to do that because it decreases profitability, but then you don't actually know if that's going to help your sales department. Now, there are two terms, I'd write these down, that you need to master. And your sales team should know these terms, you as a CEO should know these terms, and your marketing department needs to know these terms. There are only two things that matters when it comes to your sales team and marketing team. Number one is going to be problem. Number two is going to be solution aware. So problem aware and solution aware. Problem aware means your prospect or whoever you're trying to sell to is aware that they have a problem. I want to lose weight. I saw your ad and I know I want to lose weight. I'm clearly overweight. I admit that to you on the setting call and the sales call. Problem aware is pretty much a prospect understanding what problem they have. Makes it a lot easier, right? If I know what problem I have before I enter the sales call, the setting call, or in communication with your company, and I know I've got a problem, it makes it a little bit easier for me as a sales guy. Second thing though, and this is where what most people fuck up, is getting prospect solution aware. If my prospect knows they have a problem, but they don't know anything about the brand, anything about the vision, anything about the mission, they have no idea who I am, it makes it a lot harder from a sales standpoint. And so I always get asked the question, because when I made 7 figures in commissions and people would ask me, hey Yash, do you care more about problem aware prospects or solution aware prospects? I would always say solution aware. Because if they know the brand, they know what we do, I can easily find a way to make a problem out of their life. Like, I'm good at that, right? I can find a way to build a gap. But if they have no context on who the brand is, who the influencer is, they don't know what we do, it makes my life a hell of a lot harder as a salesperson to do my job because there's a lot more resistance. So whenever you're communicating with your sales team, there are 2 ways you communicate. Number one is data. I trained my sales team to where anytime they had a complaint, they didn't come to me because I was managing a 100-person team, right? So all day I'm in communication with 20 setters, 30 DM setters, 80 closers. And so I structured it in a way where when they communicated with me, they didn't communicate to me what they felt. I feel like the leads are shit. I'm like, I don't want to hear that crap because it doesn't tell me anything I need to know. And when I was in the VP of revenue, I was like a mini CEO. I was managing the whole business. I would tell them, it's like, I need you to tell me data. And so you need to come to me with the data, which is like, hey Yash, I had 80 calls this week from the YouTube lead source. Out of 80 of them, 70 of them showed up, but I only converted 20% of them. And I believe the reason why that's happening is because these people are very solution unaware. I had my sales team communicate with me based on data and what awareness they were trying to fix. Because if they came to me and they said, hey man, I got 80 leads through YouTube leads, I had a really good show up rate, I converted 20%, but the reason was because a lot of them saw this random free content or whatever it was, and they didn't really hop on knowing their problem. I'm like, no, that's your job, that's your skill set, I need to make you better. But if they hopped on, they're like, hey man, I did really well. My biggest issue was they weren't expecting the 18 grand price point. There was a lot of price shock. And then I review their calls. As the VP of revenue, I knew exactly whether it was a marketing problem or a sales problem. Identifying the constraint in your business is always key. And the way you can identify it is you have to know the EQ but IQ element. You can't just look at data all day long and judge your business like it's only based on numbers. You have to judge it on an element of EQ. And so EQ is really where it comes down to call reviews and looking at the data and knowing what decision you need to make when, whether it's fixing a marketing problem or it's fixing a sales problem. Now, the third step to building $1 million a month sales team is going to be recruitment and retention. One of the things I had to get really good at, because a lot of people thought running a $40 million a year company meant I had unlimited budget, right? But to give everybody context, I had $1 million a month worth of payroll across 150 employees in the business. So I had to find a way to really get people bought in onto culture and different aspects besides just pay, which I'm going to cover in the later sections. But what I want to go over with people in this section is how do you recruit, right? Top tier talent, but then how do you retain them? Okay, so let's start off with recruitment. The first section people need to understand is there's a big difference between right people and good people. Most people right now, and probably most of you watching this video right now, you just have shit employees in your company right now that you're too afraid of getting rid of. Alex Hormozi has a quote where he goes, you're always like a few tough conversations away from a breakthrough, right? And I think it's the same thing. Most companies that I go into, even right now, I usually end up having to fire a department or a group of people that have been in the company too long. And every time I ask the owner, why haven't you let go of them? Or why haven't we tried hiring somebody else? It's always sort of been the same pattern, which is like, oh, I didn't know, I was uncomfortable, and it always came down to fear. Most of you right now have a people issue where you don't actually have the right people in your company running your department. That's why you're not hitting KPI. That's why you're not at $1 million a month. And if you're gonna do this at scale, right, especially even if let's say you're at 100, 250, 500, doesn't matter. Understand that you're in a game of people. Every business, strategy is easy, people are hard. And so if you can consistently get the right people in your business, you are gonna do far better at actually scaling via getting mediocre people to do mediocre work. I am personally okay with paying 30% above market value to get somebody that's an A player because I can get 10x the outcome and 10x the ROI from that investment rather than paying somebody mid-salary, right, market rate or below market rate and getting shit quality. So you have to define for your business what is the right people vs good people. And so let me give you an example of kind of what I define as this. Right people, I base on work ethic, skill set, volume. And so work ethic to me, if I was to score it out of 10, which is usually how I score it, it's a 10 to me. I don't care how many hours you work. What I care about is the hours you work, what are you really putting in? Skill set is a 7 to me. I don't need somebody to be the best at their job because it is my job as a leader and as a CEO of the company to make sure that this individual ups their skill set over time. And the third step is volume. This is a 10. If I have somebody that has high work ethic, mediocre skill set, but has high amount of volume in terms of the volume of that task, whether it's marketing, whether it's operations, whether it's sales, whether it's outbound, whether it's cold calling. If they have a high amount of volume, I know with these two things alone, this here will eventually become a 10. And so my recipe of how I did recruitment is I would ask myself one question. Does this person have the work ethic? Is this person used to high volume environments of high volume worth of activity in whatever role they're put in? And is there a way to make their skill set better? And there have been many times in my career where I've found somebody that has had a really good skill set, like a 10 out of 10 skill set, but then they're at an 8 out of 10 in terms of work ethic, or they're at a 7 out of 10 in terms of volume. And what I've learned is a lot easier in the long term, not short term, but because people that are 10s in skill set but shit in other places, if you put them into your business today, they'll do well. But then eventually they're gonna plateau and your numbers are gonna stay stagnant. But if I find somebody that has good work ethic, good volume, and okay skill set, they'll probably fail a little bit more initially and it'll take a bit of a ramp up process, but I know they're appreciating asset, right? I know every month this human being is getting better via somebody that is highly skilled but work ethic and volume are shit. It's a C or a D, and I know it's a depreciating asset. You want to look at people as human beings, but you have to also start looking at them as value. If I meet somebody that has really good potential, I will invest into him because I know he'll appreciate, and that'll eventually benefit me and benefit him. But I don't want to invest into resources that will depreciate. I'm just not going to do that. So why would you do the same with your business? Recruitment is a game of understanding what you want, what are the right people and what are good people. There's usually no such thing as like, I spoke to a bunch of recruits today and they all were shit, right? Usually it's like, they were good. So you need to make a deciding factor of what's right vs good. I don't need you to be the top skilled. If you want to come work with me, I don't care if you're at a 10 out of 10 skill if your work ethic and volume is shit. I could give a fuck less. If you have decent skill set but your work ethic and volume are there, that's really the only thing I care about. And so good for me would be somebody that has, let's say, work ethic. Let's say the work ethic, to me, what would be good is the work ethic of somebody good is at a 7, skill set is at a, let's say, a 10, and then volume is at a 5. This to me would be good, which means I don't hire. But this guy, I'm gonna hire every day of the week. That's my principle, because I've seen it time and time again across anybody I've ever hired. I've always done better with the right people vs good people. It's always served me better. Okay, next step. How do you retain good talent? Listen up. I'm gonna give a few stories here of how you actually retain it. This is super important. So let's say I have an A player, and let's say he's become an A player. A players are rarely found, they're built. It took me, to give you guys perspective, 3 years for my CEO, whose name was Matt, to make me a powerful enough salesperson that he could put into any environment where I knew I could make money. It took me 4 years, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week to make my first 7 figures in commissions and then step up as an executive and then a VP of revenue. I was not an A player day one. I became an A player because somebody built me into one, and then I found my own journey through that. If you were gonna build a loyal team to get to $1 million a month, because trust me, once you get to $1 million a month, man, that's when you start losing talent. That's when things get hard. If you're gonna get to $1 million a month, you need to retain A players. The way you retain A players is you have to understand they're built. But then once you build them, how do you retain them? 3 ways you're gonna retain A players: incentive, growth, and then potential. And I'll explain the differences. So let me give you a perfect example of this, okay? I was in a company that did 40 million a year as the top sales guy. I made $1 million in commissions. I stepped up as the VP of review and I was managing it. And when I left the company, I quit. I was done. I was tired of the bullshit and I decided to leave. And I'll give you guys insight on why I decided to leave, because it's important you understand that. I left because I had no incentive of being able to grow my income. A players care about their income, but if I was to give you a roadmap between incentive, growth, and potential, incentive is another way of saying pay. This matters to A players, usually 30%. Growth Growth is usually 50%. Potential is usually 20%. And these two can be inverse. So when you are an A player, or when you're trying to retain an A player, first thing you got to focus on is what's your incentive. A players will work hard to make more money, whether they're in sales, whether they're in marketing. So what this tells you is you need to set KPIs of growth for them, right? So if let's say right now you give 10% for a salesperson, if they collect 100 grand, and let's say if they collect 200 grand, they're only going to make 10%. Good behavior unrewarded doesn't continue. So maybe what you do is it's 10% if you collect 100 grand, but if you collect 200, we bump it up to 15. You create an incentive for people to get better, which causes them to want to grow. Most of you right now, you've built your A players and you expect them to be loyal to you for whatever fucking reason because you built them, but they're not loyal to you because they have a lot more potential and they're gonna go use it somewhere else where they can make more money. And so the surface level excuse they're gonna give you is, hey man, I can make more money in that other company rather than here, but that's not true. The reason they've left is because there's no incentive for them. Second thing, growth. This is huge. A players wanna grow. If you are not pushing them to get better or grow, your A player will either do two things. He'll leave, he or she will leave and go join another company, or he or she will become a B player. If I am an A player, I've got a lot of potential. You are my leader. I am either going to stoop down to becoming a B player because I don't believe in myself, because I don't feel like you believe in me and are giving me the growth aspect and trajectory I need. Or second, I'm just going to say fuck you and go learn somewhere else. So your job as a CEO, as a leader, is to create a growth path for every one of your A players in your department. Whether that's a growth path in terms of their skill set, in their career, in their life, you need to create a growth aspect for them. That can also mean, like, if somebody's overweight, let's say, and they're an A player and you want to help them in changing their life, you help them in losing weight. Growth is not like linear. It doesn't just have to be in their business. It doesn't just have to be in their career. It can be in different aspects of their life, which is what indirectly creates loyalty and commitment to the brand. Third thing is potential, okay? You need to create enough desire and potential of your company to grow. Here's what people fuck up on. 80% of business owners and CEOs spend more time talking about the potential of the company rather than focusing on the incentive and growth. It's just like in sales. If I only talk about myself in sales and I don't talk about the prospect or the person I'm trying to sell, they're gonna get turned off, right? So it's the same shit here. If you spend 80% of your time going over the potential of your company, of your culture, of your vision, and you don't talk about how this person will grow, an A player looks at that type of shit and goes, man, this person's self-centered, they're bullshit. I left the company I worked for, which was one of the biggest B2C sales training companies in the world. I left that company because I lost all respect for the guy who ran it. I got too close to that guy. All he did was talk about the company all day. He wouldn't shut the fuck up. And so for me as an A player, I'm like, bro, this guy doesn't care about my growth, my incentive. All he cares about is the potential of the company. So why should I stay here? Look at it from an A player's perspective. Forget about your perspective. If I'm an A player and the owner, which I've been in this shoe, so I can tell you how frustrating it is, all he talks about is potential of the company, and he doesn't care about the people or the incentive of his people, he will lose. That's exactly what I did. I quit. I quit because I lost respect for the guy who ran the company, because all he fucking cared about was his own ego and his own company. He didn't give two shits about the growth of me as a human being or other people in the company, nor did he care about the incentive of making sure everybody was taken care of. This is huge. You cannot just care about the potential of your company. That's 20% of the reason somebody's gonna stay, because they wanna see it grow. You gotta focus on the growth and incentive. Step forward to building $1 million a month sales team, culture. Now I'm gonna simplify culture to you in sort of my view of how I look at it, and this should make it simple for you what it actually is, okay? Culture is not how your team interacts with each other. When KPI is being met, numbers are great, the company's happy, we're crushing it, high fives everywhere. Culture is how does your team interact with each other when things aren't going well. Have a hard look right now. How does your manager react when KPI isn't met? How does your marketing department act when KPI isn't met? Does the marketing department blame sales? Does the sales blame marketing? How do you act when KPIs aren't met? Culture is built, and you got to make a decision every day is how your culture is going to be built. The real culture of your company is built of how your team reacts when things aren't going well. When I get brought into companies, right, and I have to manage their sales team, train their team, I have to kind of turn the ship around. The first thing I look at is not we're hitting numbers, because many times they're not hitting the numbers they want to hit up to the level, right? So they're behind KPI. And my first week, I'll do one-on-ones with everybody in every department, right? And the thing I try to figure out when I speak to all of them, one, I figure out who the A players are and who are the B players. I also figure out who the B players are that can then become the A players. But the first thing I figure out after I do one-on-ones with the whole team is I figure out, how does this team interact when things aren't going well? The culture of your company is defined when things aren't going well. How does your company interact? If you're gonna get to $1 million a month, you're gonna have good months and bad months. There are gonna be certain months you do 988 and you're pissed. One month your CAC, your cost to acquire a customer goes higher. The real question is, how do you guys act? At this company I used to manage that did 40 million a year, there were times when we didn't hit KPIs as a company at the earlier stages of the company. All of us, this was a routine. Month end, week before, we're 500 grand behind KPI. All the executives, top sales guys, we'd all hop on a Zoom call. Hey, Yosh, what do you think I should do? Hey, Mark, what do you think I should do? Hey, Matt, what do you think we should do? It was a collaboration. And we used to have like an hour-long meeting, and then after that, you know, Matt, the CEO, would go, okay, motherfuckers, go get after it. That's how it worked, right? We had culture. We didn't point the finger at each other when we weren't hitting KPI or we were gonna have, you know, the week was coming to an end and we knew we had to hit a certain amount. Now, eventually that culture stopped. Eventually, that culture became marketing fucked up. Marketing said, no, you sales guys just suck. Operations, I don't want nothing to do with this. So the culture eventually became shit. It started off really well when we were doing about $1 million, $1.5 million a month. By the time we got to $3.5 million a month, everybody was against each other. Nobody wanted to take ownership. The culture of your company isn't a direct reflection of things going well, but you have to figure out when things don't go well, what happens. This also tells you if you have the right leaders in your team. If shit goes bad and your manager freaks out, you probably shouldn't be in that department. If marketing's cost per acquisition goes higher and your marketer starts changing everything in the funnels, he probably shouldn't be your VP of marketing or your head of marketing. I judge culture based on how people react when things aren't going well, but I also judge it based on how calm the executive and leadership team is. As long as they're interacting well with each other and the executive/leadership team is calm, you can pretty much solve yourself through any problem. As soon as people stop treating each other well when things aren't going well and the executive and leadership team freak out, that's terrible culture. So you gotta ask yourself, what culture do you have and what do you want it to be? And again, always remind yourself, culture is not things are going well. One thing that pisses me off is when a CEO goes like, you know, back in the day we were crushing it. It's like, but you're not now, dude. So what have you fucked up on in your culture, the decisions you haven't made that's led you to this point? Don't act like AI is taking over the world. Don't act like Facebook ads or YouTube ads don't work. Take some fucking ownership that you haven't adapted with the market, which is why now you've been left behind by the market. Define your culture based on excellence, but define it based on how your team interact when things aren't going well. And whenever it doesn't go well and you see the way they interact, those are the behaviors you then want to fix. Fifth step and final step to building $1 million a month sales team is leadership. I'm going to define leadership in one sentence. This is my experience, right? But this is also experience I have seen from pretty top performing leaders, okay? If you want to be a better leader, be a better human fucking being. If you want to know why leadership doesn't work is when your team can't look up to you and they don't see something in you that they don't see in themselves. Being a better leader means you need to be a better human being. And so if you're running a company and you want to get to $1 million a month, you have to understand the leadership traits necessary to be good. Before you look at leadership traits in your sales manager, your VP of marketing, any of that shit, you got to look at yourself. I'm going to give you a really good example of this. And if this shit doesn't set in, I don't know what will. In the $40 million a year company was the biggest B2C sales training company in the world. No executive respected the founder of the company. We all disliked him, we all thought he was a narcissist, and we all thought he was a fucking scumbag. And so let me explain the downward effect of that. I'll use fake names just to, you know, not call the person out. So let's say we have Mark, and then we have JJ. So Mark was the CEO at the time, and JJ was the founder. Mark would try to keep all the team members, right, sales guys, executives, away from JJ. And all of us found that weird. We're like, dude, does Mark have like a ulterior motive? Like, why is he trying to keep us all away? Is this some corporate bullshit? Then Mark left the company. And so guess what happened? We all spent time with JJ. And if I was to describe to you what JJ was in one way, it was utterly disappointing. The more time we spent with JJ, the less we respected him, the more we didn't want to work in the company because we lost conviction behind the brand and the product. As a leader, you have to understand that people need to look up to you and want to work with you because they see something new they don't see in themselves. And if you're utterly fucking disappointing, you're going to lose it. And so let me explain to you the downfall effect. More people got to know JJ. Understand that top performers, A players, can go work anywhere and make money. They just can't. They don't stress about money. I don't stress about money. I can go make money anywhere. I'm fine. As a sales guy or as a CEO, I don't give a fuck. A players don't care about money, they care about growth. And if they can't respect the leader, they're gonna leave. More people spent time with JJ. They could see he was a narcissist. They could see he wasn't a good human being. They could see he was self-centered. 80% of the executive team left within the next 6 months. And that company is on track to no longer be a company. If you want to be a better leader, be a better fucking human being. Part of being a better human being is take time off. Countless CEOs I've met that work fucking 15, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, they don't take time off. So they're aggressive, they're self-centered, they're mean, but that's not because that's who they are, it's because they just don't have space. Taking time off is underrated if you are a CEO. Because working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week doesn't get you $1 million a month. Working 8 to 10 hours a day, living a sustainable lifestyle so you can be a good human being, which makes you a better leader, is how you get there. If you want to retain and build A talent, you got to be able to retain and become a better person. And so JJ is a perfect example of a human being who was the founder of a $40 million a year company that is no longer a $40 million a year company. He lost 80% of his executive and his A players, and now the guy's struggling to find people to even stay in his company. And he will continue this pattern, and he will continue losing top performing people. And so if I look at Mark, who used to be in that company, he never wanted people to be around JJ because he knew that JJ was utterly disappointing, and that's what he became. And because the more time people spent with JJ, the more they resented him, and the more they didn't like him, nobody wanted to be around the guy, and so they decided it was better to just leave the company, go work somewhere else. They're an A player, they can make money, they can love the vision, they can figure something else out. The key to being a good leader is be a better fucking human being. If you are a better human being, you will automatically be a better leader. Because part of being a good human being is being calm, being nice, being respectful, being constructive, and that is all what leadership is. Every leadership course, consultant, program you've ever gone through has the same manual. Know your data, hold the reps accountable, understand the forecasting, know the budgeting. Every leadership manual says the same shit. The difference between a good leader and a bad leader is execution. And I believe to be a highly effective leader and to execute at the highest level, you got to be a better human being to be a better leader. So to be a better leader, be a better human being. And if there's one thing you learn from JJ wasn't a bad person. He became a bad person, which made him a bad leader. And that's why nobody respected him. Okay, so that's the end of the video, guys. I hope that gave you guys a better perspective on how you can actually do this for yourself. If you are a salesperson and you are wanting to get better at your skills, down below in the bio, there's a free link, a free sales training I offer. It's an hour-long course with pretty much everything I did to get to my first 7 figures in commissions. If you are somebody that runs a business and you want help with implementing this type of system into your business, book an account down below with me and or my team, and we'll see you on the inside. Click the subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.